Hello, I would like to make a video, am making a video about gossip fodder versus locker room fodder, and why I think that people overreact to locker room talk versus gossip. So, if you think about the word fodder, what does that mean? It's basically dried food, stored food for animals. That's what it is. And so, in this context, um, discussing it with gossip versus locker room talk, think of fodder as being crystallized content. So there's fluid gossip, there's fluid locker room talk, but then there's crystallized gossip, crystallized locker room talk. And I want to actually offer an opinion uh, that spits in the face of what most people by the mainstream um, commercialization of sentiments uh, seem to feel um, regarding this matter. Most people by the mainstream tend to view locker room talk as worse than gossip. But I see it the other way around, where it concerns these types of conversations as it relates to fodder, as it relates to their crystallized forms, basically. So think of it like um, gossip. Gossip is about people. It's based on people. Locker room talk isn't about people, it's about ideas of people when you compare it alongside gossip. So why is it that people get offended by locker room talk when it's not actually about anybody in reality? Whereas people, at least by judging on the mainstream, tend not to get offended by gossip as much as locker room talk. And gossip's about real people. Gossip is talking about somebody you know, whereas locker room talk is talking about an abstraction, basically. Because if you actually listen to locker room talk, I mean, there was that issue with Donald Trump, and I forget who he was talking to, but it was recorded and it was leaked, and basically the person he was talking to lost his job and everything, and Donald Trump got, Me Tooified for talking. And it was all over the media, and it was said as an example of locker room talk. Those of you who are aware of that news story, you'll know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so that happened. But you listen to that conversation, and you listen to a whole plethora of other, locker room type conversations. They're all basically discussing general abstractions. Like when you're talking about a girl who's chesting her tits out, and you're not naming anyone in particular, but you're just talking about, oh, ladies chest their tits out, you're abstracting. That's, it's not real. You're not talking about anybody real. Whereas when you're discussing, oh, Jeanette at work, she said this to so-and-so, and oh, it doesn't look too good for Jeanette, you know, and you attribute certain personality flaws because Jeanette said such and such at such a time to such and such, right? That gossip there. That's talking about somebody real. That's talking about somebody tangible. That's not abstracting. So why is that viewed as less offensive in the mainstream than locker room talk? It doesn't make sense to me. You know, to me, locker room talk is far less offensive if we're thinking about it in its crystallized form. Now, I understand in its more fluid form, uh, locker room talk can be seen as more offensive in the sense that it's more provocative. Because if you were to just walk past a door that was led into a locker room and you were to hear, oh, this girl's chesting her tits out, or, you know, oh, yeah, I gave it to her real good, oh, you know, all that shit, right? If you were to hear that in the moment, you know, as it is, you know, being chemistry fluid and in real time, the language is utilized as more offensive. I understand that because it's more provocative, right? Whereas if you were to walk past, I don't know, the doorway to a book club that's not really a book club but is a gossip club, but masquerading as a book club, and you were to hear, you know, if you were to hear walking past this other doorway, oh, Jeanette, such and such, such and such, you wouldn't, in real time, you wouldn't think much of it. You'd be like, oh, I wonder who Jeanette is, but that's about it. But you wouldn't be as offended in real time. But if you actually think about the reflective ramifications, so you reflect on what gossip actually leads to versus what locker room talk actually leads to, you begin to see an entirely different picture than the mainstream is willing to show you. You know, you see the picture of, oh, locker room talk means nothing. It's just abstracting. That's all it is. Whereas this gossip, this is actually vindictive. You're actually being insidious. You know, you're being mean to someone. You are bullying someone behind somebody's back. Essentially, that's what you're doing if you're gossiping. You know, you are alienating someone actively. And when we look at it through the lens of retrospect, when we actually think about gossip, it's actually far worse than locker room talk. Locker room talk isn't talking about anybody who's real. It's just a bunch of guys beefing their ego. It's not really talking about anything that matters, that means anything. Now, granted, I did say that in real time, in its fluid fashion, if you were to walk past a doorway, locker room talk would be more offensive as it is more provocative. You know, the way men talk behind closed doors together is more provocative, but it's not actually directed at somebody tangible. It's not actually, you know, for the most of the time, it's not actually directed at anybody who's real. So why is it more offensive in the mainstream? You know. Now, I'm a person who doesn't gossip or do locker room talk really that much at all. I rarely gossip, and if I do gossip, you know, in the past, right? If I have gossiped, I've been led into gossiping, but I haven't led anybody else into gossiping. Not that I can recall. And as for locker room talk, you know, my version of locker room talk is pretty tame, and it doesn't really. You know, you can get carried away with it, but it's not really like again, it's very abstract, and I usually just listen to other people locker room talk, and I'm just participant, spectator, viewer, that sort of thing. But anyway, I thought I would make this video because locker room fodder seems far less horrible, far less bad, far less unethical than gossip fodder. Anyway, something to think about. Have a good day. Peace. Meow.